بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, we finished the first two passages of Surah Al-Naziaat the past 2 weeks. The first passage again was about the introduction to the surah, which is the same topic or the same theme as Surah Al-Naba, and that is it's talking about the belief in Al-Akhirah, the hereafter, which the mushrikeen or the pagans, they were denying the possibility of that existing. So the surah starts off the same way, with their claims and kind of swearing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, specifically the angels and the way they maintain the order, and that at His command they can disrupt that order as well. And then it switched to the story of Musa alayhi salam with Fir'aun. And again, the context was this is also basically the rejection of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So here's what happened to a people that rejected the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam or the Messenger of Allah, which was Musa alayhi salam, and what their consequence was for actually rejecting the messenger which Allah had sent. And now in this third passage, it switches back to talking about specifically their rejection of the idea that there is an akhirah, that there is an afterlife, that they will be resurrected. And this is the passage contains ayat numbers 27 through 33. So it starts off with A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, أَأَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ خَلْقًا أَمِ السَّمَاءُ بَنَاهَا رَفَعَ سَمْكَهَا فَسَوَّاهَا وَأَغْطَشَ لَيْلَهَا وَأَخْرَجَ ضُحَاهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, are you a greater creation or is the heaven? Right? Literally, are you a more difficult creation or is the heaven? Allah constructed it. He raised its ceiling high and proportioned it, and He darkened its night and extracted its brightness. So this is the first part of this passage, and immediately the tone changes again. You had the tone in the beginning speaking in third person, talking about they reject this and this is what they think, and they say that are we going to be resurrected after our bones have decayed. And then it goes into the story of Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun, and then now antum, are you specifically. So now it's talking to a specific group of people, and that's what the Mufassirin, they point out, that those who denied the possibility of the hereafter are directly being addressed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in Arabic and in the Quran this is called iltifat, when the figure or the person changes in speech, and we talked about this in Al-Fatiha and other surahs as well. So it goes from talking to people in the third person to talking to them in the first person. And one of the reasons behind this is to catch the people's attention, that to change up the way the speech is, so it keeps people's attention. And so when you hear it from the third person now directly you being addressed, it kind of changes your attention to the subject. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, are you a more difficult creation or the sky or the heavens that Allah Azza wa Jalla created? Banaha, He definitely created them. And again, this is an affirmative question. It's what's called in Arabic a su'al al-taqriri, meaning Allah is not asking a question looking for an answer from them. He's basically asking a question in the form of saying, this is the truth, this is the reality. And we use language in this way, even with English sometimes, right? We use language, even in the English language, we'll ask somebody a question, not to get an answer from them, but to make it a point that this is what's happening, or this is what you're doing, right? So we'll use the question as a form of bringing attention to a reality. So again, their answer is not sought, the question is posed just to affirm the reality of the fact that the heaven, or the skies, not heaven as in paradise now, right? We're talking about the skies. That the sky is a more difficult creation or a greater creation than the creation of ourselves. Now it's important to understand that the perspective with which we're saying the word more difficult creation is the human perspective. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to say to these people is, what do you think is actually more difficult? To make you, which is one entity, one person, or a race of people or a group of people that lives in one limited place in this universe, or the entire universe as you can see it? What would you think is more difficult, right? So that's, from our perspective, that's what's being said. Nothing, again, is difficult for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not saying it's difficult for me. He's proving a point. What do you think would be more difficult? What do you think is greater? And the overall point here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who has created this amazing, wonderful existence that He has, it's very easy for Him to recreate us if He wants to do that. That's the point He's trying to that's the point that is being made in this verse. And again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the creator of this great heaven and sky is the same Allah that has made you, the same Lord that has made you. So the focus is on the ability of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create wondrous things, to do things which are unimaginable by our standards. And to, if they can't fathom, they can understand the fact that we will be resurrected exactly as we are when we are resurrected and alive, then well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done things that are greater than that, beyond just that, and that is the creation of this system of the heavens and the earth that exists already. So He can, with just a single command, kun fayakun, make it all happen again. So that is the point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making with this ayah. That are you a more difficult creation or the heaven? And He says, Banaha, Allah is the one, He is the one that created it. Rafa'a samkaha fasawwaha. And He is the one that He's raised it really high. Now in the English translation they say it raised its ceiling. The Rafa'a means to raise, and samk is something that is raised high in and of itself. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing is emphasizing the fact about the height at which with this creation that He has existed or He has made exists. So it is very high, right? And the sky that is being talked about here, as some of the Mufassirin they talk about, is the lowest sky. And when we have this concept of the 7 skies or the 7 heavens, right? Sab'a samawat, the 7 heavens or the 7 skies. So the lowest of these skies, the Mufassirin they say that anything where you can see the stars, whatever the stars and the planets and all these things are contained in, this is the lowest or the first sky. As-sama ad-dunya they call it. The lowest or the first sky is the one that contains all the stars and all the planets and all of these things. So this wonderful creation that Allah is talking about is this huge existence that we haven't as human beings even discovered. We've discovered just a small portion of it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, هو الذي يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده وهو أهون عليه وله المثل الأعلى في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. In another place in the Quran, in Surah Al-Rum, Allah says, and it is He who begins the creation. Then He repeats it. And that is even easier for Him. The point that He's trying to make as well, that is being made here as well. To Him belongs with the highest attribute in the heavens and the earth, and He is the exalted, the mighty, and wise. So that Allah Azza wa Jal, He has made this point over and over again in the Quran, more clearly in this ayah, but this is exactly what is meant by are you something more difficult, or is the heaven, the creation of the sky above us. And in this portion, we have these descriptions of the sky that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself mentioned. Number one, it's raised extremely high, and we don't know its extent. Right? We don't know as a reality, we don't know its extent. The lowest one is the one that contains all the stars. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَسَوَّاهَا, then He proportioned it, is the word they use. To make something, taswiyah is to basically make it even, to make it smooth, to make it like something without any faults. And Allah mentions this in other parts of the Quran as well, specifically Surah Al-Mulk. He says, look at the sky, do you see any cracks, do you see any faults? He's made it something that when we look at it, the reality is it's transparent, yet we can clearly define what the sky is, what it is. So it's something that He's placed there, it's something that He made, and there are no faults in it, right? There are no dents or bumps or cracks or breaks, right? It's something that is just pure. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَأَخْطَشَ لَيْلَهَا وَأَخْرَجَ ضُحَاهَا. He darkened its night, and He extracted its light, or its brightness, right? In the daytime, and referring to making the nighttime and the daytime. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He darkened the night, and again this is an emphasis on the fact, right? He's using 2 words that mean the same thing. Akhtasha means to make something dark, and the layl is the darkness or the night in and of itself. But He has darkened the night, and again from our perspective, وَأَخْرَجَ ضُحَاهَا, and extracted the light, its light meaning the sky, right? Meaning the sky. And all of these descriptions are from the perspective of people on earth, right? So we know that the light comes because why? Because the sun rises and the sun shines its light, right? But that's not the point that's being made. The point that's being made is from our perspective, we see the sky change colors. Sometimes it's red, sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's dark, right? This is how we see things. When we talk about the sun setting and the sun rising, these are also words we use from our perspective. We know the sun doesn't set or the sun doesn't rise, right? It's the earth that spins and so on and so forth. But these are all things that we naturally do we ourselves do from our own perspective. We name things from our perspective, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the perspective of the people on earth here as well. But these are all the things that He describes having made the sky with. So it's talking about the sky we can see, the lowest sama ad-dunya, and how beautiful of a creation it actually is, and that Allah is the one that made all of this happen. He's pointing this out. He is the one that made it dark. He is the one that brings out the light, right? So obviously the message here is if He wants, He can disrupt that order and He can make it a destructive order, right? Meaning that everything will be destroyed and there can be a resurrection because He's already made all of these things once. This is just a slide where we talk about some reflection on the creation of the sky. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning, drawing our attention to the creation, this is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to prove that there is one creator and one Allah, one God, one object of worship. That's it. Because the creation is the biggest proof. And this is throughout the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does this over and over again, using the creation itself. And when we ponder over the creation itself, you realize that this is something that is created by a mighty and powerful and wise God. And it's not, just a coincidence or random or things like that. So this is just something to kind of help us give a perspective. Allah is saying that He made, is this sky a greater creation or difficult creation, or you? So just to put things in perspective, right, we can look at the sky and kind of ponder, but now we have a lot more data about the sky, right? A lot more information about what's really out there. So look at some of these things and study these things and see, just to get a perspective. So just some points I gathered. There are approximately 400 billion stars in our galaxy, with as many as 500 billion galaxies in the universe that we know about, right? So you think about what your role or how, your perspective, what is your greatness, in this world, right? How great of or how important of a thing are you? The sun is the smallest star, Betelgeuse they call it, is about 20 times the mass of the sun, and it's 1,000 times larger than the sun. And I have actually a video to show as well, so you can kind of get a perspective on what that looks like. The bigger the star, they say, the shorter its life. So the sun being the smallest star is actually beneficial for us, right? We have longer time with it. When you look at the stars, you're literally looking back in time. It's something you may have studied when you were in school, because the light that reaches us has to travel millions of years or hundreds of thousands of years to even get to us. So what we're looking at may not even exist anymore at times, right? So we know this. But this is just kind of pondering over the sky itself. And I did want to, let's see if this comes up, just for perspective. Excuse me, there's supposed to turn this on. Just for perspective, to show us the reality, the size that actually exists of the different stars that are out there. This is talking about the Earth compared to the sun. And then they're going to show the other stars, because the sun is the smallest star, just to show you in perspective of how small we actually are. This, I think, is the one that's slightly bigger than our sun. So you get a perspective of how tiny we really are, right? When you see the comparison of the size of what exists to versus what's, where we live and where we are. I think that's the last one. Allahu A'lam. But just to give a perspective, I mean, these are the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to consider, right? Are you really, more difficult or more greater of a creation, or this heaven or this skies that exist, these planets that exist out there, whatever this contains? So we need to actually look. The information, alhamdulillah, when it's there, we should be doing reflection, right? And this is tafakkur and tadabbur. We should be looking at what we have of information and really seeing, wow, we are like smaller than a crumb, or maybe like a germ, or a gnat, or something, whatever the smallest thing you can think of, compared to what Allah has created that exists out there. We're really nothing, right? And that was just the earth in comparison to the sun. What about us in comparison to the sun, right? We're not even the size of these other things. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the last, or the rest of this passage. Allah says, وَالْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ دَحَاهَا. After He talks about the sky, then He talks about the earth. أَخْرَجَ مِنْهَا مَاءَهَا وَمَرْعَاهَا وَالْجِبَالَ أَرْسَاهَا مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ. And with that, He spread the earth, right? After He's made the skies, and He's also talking about the earth. He has spread out the earth. He extracted from it its water and its pasture. Meaning within this planet that we live on, from this very planet that we live on, the source of nutrition comes, right? The water comes from this planet, the vegetation, the pasturage, the herbage, the fruits, the vegetables, all of these things come from the planet that we live on. And the mountains He set firmly in the earth as well. The mountains He has set firmly, أَرْسَاهَا مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ. Why did He do this? As a provision for you and your grazing livestock. So this is something that for you to enjoy, and for the animals that are on this planet to enjoy this as well. So Allah brings forth evidences of His ability to create, His ability over creation by mentioning the earth as well. And reflecting sometimes maybe about the sky may leave you thinking, wow, like we don't even know what's out there. It's so far away, we can only see things from a distance and kind of gauge their sizes. That's really what we can do. And only a specific group of people are involved in studying what's in the sky. But the earth is closer to us, right? So once we get bewildered by the sky, the earth is something that's closer to us. And Allah Azza wa Jal draws our attention to that which is right before us, that which we can ourselves go out and study and learn about and ponder and look at more deeply. And that is the earth. So he said he spread out the earth, he created it so it's spread out in proportion, easy for us to live on, proportion and in a way that we can live on various parts of it with different climates and so on and so forth. There is an issue that comes up here between the mufassirin, between the different scholars of tafsir. And they talk about what was created first, the heaven or the skies or the heavens or the earth, right? And so this is something that we talk about, and there's a difference of opinion between the mufassirin about, but it really is not the point of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about here. And that's because, as one of the Mawdudi mentioned in Tafsir, he says, the object is not to mention the sequence of occurrence between two things, but to draw attention from the first to the second thing, although they may both exist together. So several instances of this are found in the Quran, and that's because the usage of the word after that, right? It's used in different ways. It's used to refer to things happening at the same time. It's used to things referring to things happening after one another. But the point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making is not this came first, that came second. He's not talking about this. He's saying this is what exists, and then look at this also exists, right? That is the distinguishing factor that's being made here. And when it comes to the language of it, the word after, ba'da dhalika in Arabic, means different things. It can mean along with something. It can mean before with something. And it has these uses in the Quran as well, in the various places as well. But it's not really something that's important that affects our iman. Whether Allah created the earth first, whether He created the sky first, it really doesn't matter. The fact is they're created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He put them there, and the wonder is that in their creation that He wants to draw our attention to. Again, when Allah says He extracted its water and its pasture here is referring to any form of vegetation that grows from the earth. Whether it's fruit, whether it's grains, whether it's different types of vegetation and things that grow from the earth, and that humans and animals both eat from. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ. They're an enjoyment for you and for your grazing animals and for your livestock, because these are things that both of us eat. And this ayah itself shows you the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He didn't just put us here and leave us on our own to kind of figure things out, right? He put us here and He provided us with exactly what we need. We need water to survive, we need food to survive, we need shelter. All of this comes with what grows from the earth, right? We nourish ourselves with water, we use water to clean, we use the trees that grow to build our houses, and the stuff that comes from the ground we use to make bricks and all these kinds of things. Everything that we need to sustain ourselves comes from this earth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, right? And that's the beautiful thing, right? Only a creator who is wise, who is hakim, who is caring and merciful and loving would be able to do this, right? If this was just coincidence, we may not have certain things we need. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with everything, every plan that He has made, everything existent for us so that we can sustain ourselves. And Allah says, وَالْجِبَالَ أَرْسَاهَا, He firmly set the mountains. And Allah uses the mountains in the Quran many places to talk about many different things, or many different concepts, right? Obviously mountains, when you think of a mountain, you think of something firm, something strong. And He describes them as such. He says, وَإِلَى الْجَبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ, that do they not see, do they not look and ponder over the mountains and how they are created, how they are erected and standing firm, right? Allah refers to them as that. And here He says, وَالْجِبَالَ أَرْسَاهَا. And arsaha, it's like when you anchor something, right? When you have something going underground or holding it. So we know the mountains, they don't just exist on top of the ground, but they have these roots that go deep into the ground and hold them firm, right? They hold these mountains firm. And Allah also uses the mountains in another ayah. He says, وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا إِنَّكَ لَن تَخْرِقَ الْأَرْضَ وَلَن تَبْلُغَ الْجِبَالَ طُولًا. He says, do not walk upon the earth arrogantly. You will never tear apart the earth, nor will you ever reach the mountains in height. Meaning these are some, when you think about mountains, it brings an image of power and might and firmness and strength, right? And Allah is saying, don't act like you're that kind of a person, that you're arrogant and haughty and looking above everybody else. You're not going to reach the mountains in height, meaning there's something bigger than you, nor is your stride strong enough that it's going to crack the earth. And Imam Tahir ibn Ashur, he mentions that part of the meaning of the word arsaha, irsa, to kind of firmly solidify these mountains, is that they're sloped, right? He talks about it from a linguistic perspective. He says they're also sloped so that people can climb them. He mentions that they're not inhabitable, they're not something that you can't go and live on, depending on which mountain it is. We do have vegetation on mountains as well. We do have people that live on mountains as well. So it's something that is still part of that proportion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us to enjoy in this world. And Allah says, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ, as a provision for you and your grazing livestock. The word mata' in and of itself, it means things that you benefit from for a certain period of time. Right? Things that you benefit from for a certain period of time. So what Allah is telling us even in this ayah linguistically is that this is something for you to enjoy, but for a time. You're not going to be here forever. There's going to be an end to all of this. And so in another place in the Quran, Allah clearly says, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ مُسْتَقَرٌ وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِينٍ. Clearly he says, and even more clearly, he says, and you will have upon the earth a place of settlement and provision for a time. For a time. This is when he sent Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam down to the earth from paradise. This is what he told them, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ مُسْتَقَرٌ وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِينٍ. You will have enjoyment, but for a time. And this is emphasis because the word mata' in and of itself means enjoyment for a time already. And he's just emphasizing the fact that it's not going to be forever. It's going to come to an end. Meaning this earth, these mountains, all of these things are going to come to an end. And the provision that is provided for us and the animals, that he says this is a provision for you, it is through the creation of the sky, the earth, and the mountains, and all these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned. And some of the scholars have mentioned even mountains as why, because mountains are used as sanctuaries, right? To protect yourself when there's an enemy that's attacking a nation, they'll resort to the mountains because it's harder to get to them, right? They also have protected grazing fields which are higher up. The rain hits the mountains first. They get more rain than any other land and so on and so forth. So the mountains are also themselves a means of seeking benefit and protection, even though they are strong in and of themselves. And we'll stop with this passage here, inshallah. And next time we'll finish off the surah, inshallah, if we are meeting next time. If there are any comments or questions, inshallah. While you're doing that, also compile some pictures, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to reflect, right? So some pictures of the mountains and things, and kind of look at it. Get not just the beauty, but the greatness of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really has created. Now, Brother Mike.
Yeah. So, going back to the word arsaha, I'm glad you have pictures of the mountains.
Yeah, there we go.
Arsa is also a word that's used for ships when they come to rest, when they stop,
anchor, yeah.
when they majraha or marsa, meaning when they're moving fast is majra, when then marsa, when it slows down, come to park basically.
Yeah.
And when we discovered and studied the mountains in geology, we learned that actually the plates on the earth, the continental plates have moved, and then the mountains have moved and developed, and then they rested in this particular fashion that they are now. And actually some of them will continue to move, especially when there's movements like earthquakes and so forth.
Yeah.
But just saying that the word marsaha is almost conveys that concept that they were once moving, and they have actually parked in this position for you guys to enjoy as they are.
SubhanAllah. Yeah, beautiful, mashallah.
For a brief period too.
For a brief mata'an lakum, yeah, for ilahin, for a brief period. Yes,
yeah,
brother.
I wanted to just clarify. So the Quran speaks of 7 heavens.
So the heavens here refers to things that are above us, in the sense of like layers of the skies. So whatever we can see and whatever includes the planets and the stars that exist, that would be the first layer, basically the first sky or the first heaven. So the heaven here is not synonymous to paradise. That's the difference. So paradise is something else. Heaven here just means, the word sama in Arabic means that which is above you. So there are 7 layers of things that are above us, and which we call the universe or whatever, and whatever contains all the stars and planets and these things is just the first. Then there are 6 more, right? 6 more layers that we have no idea what is contained therein. So, and at the end of it all is the arsh, or the throne of Allah, the throne of God Himself, and then beyond which is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is kind of, just to put in perspective how much is actually out there versus how much, it quickly helps you to understand it's not just about you. And Allah is powerful, and there are other things that He's created and other things that we may not possibly know about. So
I was like, 400 billion
stars in our galaxy.
And 500 billion galaxies. There's 400 billion in one galaxy. 400 billion stars.
Yeah, I got this from starlab.com, so it's a pretty reliable website, I hope.
Yeah, that's within the first heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what the scholars have said, basically. Whatever the stars and all of these things are within just the first heaven, basically. I mean, it would be.
Yeah.
So that just shows you that, and you saw the video of Hassan.
Like whatever number it gives for like what's in the galaxies and universe and stuff. So like, you know how you were talking about how the light travels to us and then we see it so many millions of years like behind what it is. It's like the same thing with it's called the observable universe, right?
Yeah.
Like there's an extent to which the light has traveled to us.
Yeah.
Like whatever's beyond that, the light of that stuff is still traveling to us. So like,
MashaAllah.
we
Yeah.
can't even
So
see. I mean,
we'll see it later, maybe.
like
Yeah.
what it is right now, what we can like observe at this point.
Yeah. And again, that just shows you, the greatness of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created and the limits that we have to our knowledge. I mean, there are things we can see, but we can't even do anything other than see them, right, from a distance. So that's why He also gave us the earth as an example, because the earth, we're still discovering things in this planet. We're still discovering species of animals. We're discovering different plants. We're discovering different creatures and things that exist right here on earth. So, I mean, it just goes to show you what else is possible. When just here we're finding so many things. What is the possibility of existence there? Interesting note, one of my uncles actually has a species of either crab or shrimp named after him. He's a marine biologist in Pakistan. And he discovered, a species of, I think he's going to kill me if he watches, but it's either a crab or a shrimp or something. But it was a new species that they discovered. And it carries his name, so I'm a proud family member of someone who's discovered a crab or a shrimp or something.
So the verse about أنتم أشد خلقا من السماء, it's almost like a rhetorical question, because if you go in the larger scale,
Yeah.
it's almost like infinity.
Yeah.
If you go in the smaller scale also, there's amazing wonders that are smaller and smaller and smaller. We still discover.
Yeah. We cracked the atom, and then now there's even smaller things. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's at like either side of the infinity scale.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
There's wonders.
And it shocks me when you see the image of the largest star that we've discovered compared to the size of the Earth. And in another video they actually talk about, like, just to imagine the size, if you were to fly in an airplane around that star one time, it would take over 1,000 years. 1,100 years to fly in a Boeing 747 as fast as it goes around that star. So I mean, it just shows you. I mean, we know of things that exist that the eye can't see, right? But technically, from that perspective, we are also things that those eyes can't see, right? If his eye is as big as that star, we're non-existent basically to that eye. So I mean, it really helps put things in perspective. But this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He tells us to look, and this is what we're talking about in Surah An-Naba. In Surah An-Naba, when He says, He goes through that list, right? How does it start? No, the list of أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. Did we make the earth like this, and the mountains like this, and the skies like this? And literally what He's doing is He's telling you to look at these things and imagine these things. And you're looking up and you're looking down, you're looking at the sky, you're looking at the ground, the rain as it comes down, the vegetation as it grows. And you can watch, now we can see, even videos of, they have time lapses of a seed as it cracks, and then the plant grows and it comes out of the ground and all this stuff. And it's a beautiful thing to observe. Right? And these are things that we don't appreciate the beauty of because of the world we live in, but Allah has given us a new perspective to be able to appreciate these things. A long time ago, people weren't as advanced technologically as we were. They weren't as glued to certain things as we were, but they would enjoy the beauty of what exists, right? And they would take the time to watch the plants as they grow and all these things. We don't do that. But now we have the technology that can see the seed crack and grow. Allah really wants us to see these things, right? He's made this available for us, so we actually, just because we're not sitting, on a farm, doesn't mean we can't watch them. Alhamdulillah, He's given us the means to observe. And the point being, when He draws our attention to these things, we really need to go and look at these things. Look at the sky. And that's when Allah Himself is the one that's allowed us to pass, the limits of the earth and to go into space. And He is, without His permission, none of this would have happened, right? لَا تَنْفُذُونَ إِلَّا بِسُلْطَانٍ. You cannot cross these limits except with authority from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when He's given us this permission and He's told us to ponder over these things, it's something that teaches us we need to, and it's a great exercise when you're losing. You think like, oh, I'm not feeling that connection in my prayer, or I feel like I'm distant, from my religion or something. Just go and observe nature and what Allah has created, and it helps to bring you back really fast as well. Yes, Brother Saf.
So in talking about, I guess, starting out with the rhetorical question about what Allah has created, and then it talks about the skies, and how they're sort of perfect. When you look at them, they look perfect. There are no cracks or seams.
No.
I guess the opposite example I see is what man has created.
Yeah.
So when you look at,
Exactly.
I play video games, so when you're looking at it, it's rendering a certain scene in front of you. If you turn the camera too fast, it starts to render the other scene, and you see the cracks in it, right? Another example from our
That's
world is
interesting.
if you saw the Super Bowl, in the football field, they put that yellow line, which is sort of
It's
the
computerized.
10-yard line, which is computerized. And it takes 3 different cameras capturing the whole thing simultaneously to put it there. And even then, there are flaws in it. Sometimes it'll go on top of the players, right? So that's something that man has created. And with all the technology and everything, it still has cracks visible in it.
Visible, yeah.
And in comparison, you look at the sky, it's always perfect from
Alhamdulillah.
whichever
Beautiful,
angle.
yeah. And that's the point. Allah is the creator, and we're just using whatever we have to make. We're benefiting from these things, but definitely nothing we create is going to be perfect.
It's done one time. You know how every technology is always improving and changing?
Yeah, and Allah made it once, and then it's perfect. Alhamdulillah.
And that same feeling of awe and wonder of Allah's creation, we feel in the Quran, in Allah's words.
Yeah.
So we have 2 ways to get to understand.
Definitely. Yeah. And you can't separate the two, right? It's connected. Because this one tells you look at that. When you look at that, it brings you back to the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah. Any other comments or questions? خير جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير.